which I bought for $50. That was paper route money and picking cherry money. And actually, I still have parts of that car. Somebody convinced me that they needed the body for something else, but I do have the remnants of that car.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. So, so $50 for a Model T right now, and this is just a curious question out because I've been asking so many different folks in our network as far as what it's like rehabbing them, what it's like, restoring or, owning them. What part of a Model T could you get for $50 today? Just out of curiosity.
Well, half a tire maybe,
Half
or
a tire.
Couple of tubes. But
Fair enough.
$50 would equate today to maybe $300 or $400, whatever,
Right.
or more.
Right.
Because most of the cars I had in high school, I paid $20 or $25 for.
Well, and didn't Bob Kinghorn was talking about that, another volunteer at the museum. For anybody who doesn't know Bob, he has a story about one of the cars that he first got, and I don't remember the price, but it was something about what you spend out for a dinner with maybe a glass of wine or two these days, so it's just incredible. It's incredible to think about. John, another question that I had just personally off the top of my head, when you're talking about, got a car from an uncle, when you picked up your first car, I'm hearing a lot of stories about that, about how there wasn't really that strict, you get your first car at 16 or anything like that. Was that, it seemed like so much of it had to do with what your family had to do with cars and how interested they were, and, and how much kids were encouraged to kind of start tinkering around at whatever age. Was it something that was kind of passed down from your family in your case, the interest?
It really was. At the museum, we have our one-cylinder Rio, 1908 Rio, little horseless carriage. My grandfather was a doctor in Rochester, New York, and he used to make house calls on a bicycle or on a trolley until he bought his Rio. And when my father died, my wife was going through things and she found my grandfather's owner's manual and his expense account of his first car, his Rio. And I was sort of active in the Rio Club at that time and found a car just like my grandfather had back in 1909.
Oh, wow.
There's always been an interest in cars in the family. My father would take me to antique car shows and to races at Watkins Glen. And we'd look at cars, but he was a conservative banker and he'd never buy one. So I sort of made up for what Dad didn't do, because we have in our garage, and it all said like 24
right?
cars.
You had to make up for years of window shopping.
Right.
Well, for anyone just joining us, I'm talking with John Harris, a longtime volunteer and trustee with us at Owl's Head Transportation Museum. Go ahead and write in your comments or questions to John while we're chatting and gearing up for episode 8. We did have a few shout outs to you, John. Ron Quebec is tuning in saying hey. And of course, Tom Goodwin, the series creator, is always sort of lurking behind the scenes and says, whoa, how much would a stock mid-19 teens Model T cost today? And I think from what Warren and Phil have told me in previous live streams, that varies a lot, right?
It does, but it's pretty affordable to get into Model Ts. You can get a pretty decent Model T, maybe not a prize show car, but $5,000 to $10,000, a car you could have a lot of fun with. I had an interesting time yesterday. Hemmings Motor News, which advertises all sorts of antique cars, had an ad for a 1913 Model T town car, a limousine. And
car limousine.
It was a very limited production thing, custom bodies that they, in the early 1910, 1911, 1912, 13, they had a few of these. So I drove yesterday to Middletown, New York, and back, 750 miles. Look at a town car, which I was all excited about. But when I got to see it, turned out that it was put together a bunch of pieces and fabrication. There wasn't much original other than the frame and the engine and radiator, but the rest of it was a fabrication, which if somebody was doing weddings, it might be fun, but as a collector's car, I opted out.
I can tell the similarities with you and Warren when it's very much the respect thing of anybody with an interest in Model Ts, there's a respect there, but then you have the word collector that gets dropped a lot, and you can tell that there is a difference between things that were kind of custom built back then and custom built now. It seems there's a big difference.
What's nice about Model Ts is that the parts are still available. Catalogs. Yeah. You can build one just ordering parts. You can still find barn find Model Ts.
Right. What is it? Old Lang or something catalog? Warren recommends?
Lang's, yes. In fact, I just got a text from Don Lang last night saying the car I was looking at, he knew some of the history if I was interested. Well, I found out the history, but I had to drive 750 miles. I wish Don Lang had contacted me the day before. It saved me that mileage.
Right. Do you find that that's the case, John, that, you know, in the Model T community, if it's something that's kind of that rare, that within clubs or within regions that people are kind of aware of what's around them for collector items?
It's interesting. I think I'm a member of 4 different face groups of Model T enthusiasts.
Well, there's definitely a lot of them out there. When we started the series, I joined just for curiosity's sake, you know, and to kind of figure out what was going to be interesting to share out from the museum. And the amount of knowledge that is shared on a daily basis in those groups, if anyone has not joined, I recommend it highly. It is an excellent way to get acclimated, because it's almost like people are doing a combination of Mythbusters, classifieds, and then there's this fun part where people will share photos and just say, what is this? What do we do with this?
We've moved around somewhat in the last almost 60 years. I was stationed out in Seattle, Washington in the Navy.
Oh.
And we bought our second Model T out there and joined a Model T club. It was like, you know, welcoming into the community.
Yep.
And that Model T sort of has an interesting family history. We still have it. It's the one we took out to Dearborn for the 60th anniversary of the Model T production.
Is that the family picture, John?
That's the family picture with the luggage rack loaded down.
Yep. Oh, while you're telling this story, I'm going to share that picture out because I told you ahead of time. This is one of my favorite pictures. I just love that.
That's that Model T, but that's when we took it to Dearborn for the anniversary.
That's for the anniversary.
Best Dressed Family Award we received. There we are.
There we go.
I'm not a mechanic. We bought this car and it actually had been cosmetically restored by a lady who did the upholstery and the paint and the top, but mechanically it was a little rough. So I bought a manual and took the engine apart and sent the rods off to be rebabbited and put it together, I think about 3 o'clock in the morning. We joined the Seattle Model T Club the next day for a trip to Victoria, Canada. And at that point, we had 2 children in diapers. We had a babysitter we took with us. You can see we're loaded down there. We had a diaper bucket and formula on the running board.
How far away, how much of a drive was that, John?
Well, it was somewhat island hopping with ferries and so on out in Seattle. So, but it was like 100 miles, I think, altogether. And then we actually came back on the ferry to Seattle from Victoria. But
so you're telling me that you went 100 miles in a car that you'd finished off at 3 a.m. with 2 kids in diapers, a babysitter that probably was wondering what was happening, and a pram attached to the back, as far as I can see.
Yep,
That's a brave move, John.
well, I have a pretty gutsy wife.
So tell me about this other picture, though. Tell me about what's happening in this photo. What was happening around you? What was it like at the 60th anniversary at the Ford Museum?
This is when we lived in Washington, D.C., and we actually trailered this same 25 touring car from Washington, D.C. to Toledo, Ohio, where we had relatives, and we dropped the trailer off and drove on to Dearborn for the event. We're driving on a superhighway. A tremendous thunderstorm developed. We had no side curtains. We put the kids under a tarp in the back. When we got to Greenfield Village, everything was soaked. The car, our baggage, the kids. Coco went right off to a laundromat. But we did dress pretty authentically for the period and got the Best Dressed Family Award. We never win awards for our cars because we drive them and use them. We don't have them to show. And when we were returning on the Ohio Turnpike, driving, I think in the evening or in the dark, in our old Chevy station wagon, towing the Model T on the flatbed behind us, we were listening live to the first landing on the moon, which was pretty incredible.
Oh my gosh. So it was a momentous day all around, not just because of the family award, but everyone always talks about, where were you when this happened?
You're right. That you were.
That's amazing. So John, we have had Marianne, another longtime volunteer and cast member of Shifting History, is tuning in. She says hi. And our friend Jeremy Shaw has also tuned in and says that John has the greatest outfits for the New England Auto Auction. And I don't have a photo of that handy, but I don't think I need one because everybody knows who John Harris is at the New England Auto Auction.
Yeah, we're sort of missing that this year, aren't we?
We are, but I think we'll have to make up for it next year in some way. Maybe we'll put racing stripes down your suit, or, maybe your son can dress up and we can have twice the Harrises on stage.
Speaking of our son, we call him our Model T baby. We were going to the base for a Labor Day picnic with the Model T. And Coco was about 8.5 months pregnant with our son, Charles. Model Ts are a gravity fuel system. And if you're going up a steep hill and you don't have a full gas tank, you may run out of gas. The saying is, well, you can back up the hill. And I think some people did that. But I found if you could sort of
zigzag,
throw the car back and forth, gas would get in and you could make it up a hill. So Coco, my wife, sitting next to me with our 2-year-old, year and a half year old daughter on her lap, and we're chugging up the hill and bouncing around, and we made it and we got home, and she said, John, I'm packing my bag and you go get the babysitter. We're going to the hospital. And I said, you're not due for a couple of weeks. She said, that Model T ride did it. So Charles was born shortly thereafter. He's our Model T baby.
Well, we'll have to add that to the list of suggestions with spicy food and walking around. Go for a hill ride in a Model T.
Well, I when I give Model T rides at Owlset, and there are obviously a woman that is going to deliver, I say, if you want to speed it up, I've got a way we can do that.
Another unforgettable Model T ride given at Owl's Head, I'm sure. So John, how many Model Ts have you owned in your life?
Actually, I have never sold a Model T, so I guess we have 4 Model Ts at this point. I don't know
sold a Model T.
No, I don't know how to sell a car. I just know how to buy them. The most recent one was produced the last week of production. It was 14,999,632, I think, of 15 million Model Ts made. So Henry and Edsel Ford drove the 15th million off the assembly line, and our Model T went off a couple of days before that.
Oh, wow. And so that was a big thing in getting that car.
It was, and we sort of knew the history of the car when we were in the 60s, and Washington, D.C. Model T Club, the head of that club, fixed this car up for cross-country driving. And it was a reenactment of a 1909 race from New York City to Seattle. And he fixed this car up to do that. So it's driven from New York to Seattle.
Oh my gosh, how many Model Ts can say that? That's wild.
Well, you know, they do that every few years. And in fact, Don Lang, who you spoke of, takes a trailer full of parts, and they keep them going.
I would imagine that's necessary. We should do that some year. That would be so much fun. I mean, don't tell Kevin I said that. If we add one more thing to the plate, but that sounds like a blast.
Yeah.
So, 4 Model Ts, which that you've acquired, that you've bought over your lifetime, which one's your favorite?
That's like, what's your favorite, kid?
That's okay. None of the Model Ts are listening. I won't tell anyone.
Sort of a special one that we acquired is a 1912 Torpedo, which was almost like a hot rod that Henry Ford was making. It was a sporty model with, instead of the gas tank being under the seat, the gas tank is in the back. And they only made those for a couple of years. So that's sort of there it is. Yeah, that's sort of special. We took it to a show in Florida, Vintage Weekend, where there are vintage cars, vintage planes, and vintage boats.
Oh, wow.
And you drive over the red carpet. Well, the announcer for the event is quite a car collector himself, and he drove over in his Stanley Steamer mountain wagon, and then turned it over to somebody to drive away after it explained, and then we drove up in the Model T. And Ron always has a good story about the cars that are in the show. They make everybody think that they've got the best car in the show. Well, behind me was a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud, and I mean, they're just amazing cars in the show. Then I was asked if we were going to be around for breakfast Sunday. I said, yeah, we'll have breakfast before we leave. He said, good. We were presented with the award for the most significant brass era car. Now, some of these $3 and $4 million brass era cars that were in the show were a little disappointed that the lowly Model T received the award, but it probably is the most significant car that, put America on the road.
Right? Well, and I've never seen a Model T like that. And at this point, I've seen a lot of Model Ts. But that one does it like, what did you just call it? A hot rod. It does feel like the hot rod version.
It was a little bit sporty for a Model T.
Right? Now, are there some, I have to ask, I hope I don't start controversy, but I do have to ask, are there those who kind of view, the Torpedo model or Model Ts like that as kind of, kind of like the way some people look at spoilers put on Dodge Neons almost, I mean, is there a view that it's not an authentic T?
Well, it's very much an authentic T. It's just that it was a more limited production, so it makes it a little more unique.
Wonderful. Well,
but I would encourage anyone to get into Model Ts because it's so easy and relatively inexpensive.
Right. Well, and me and Phil Reinhardt were doing our live stream earlier this weekend. The interesting thing that we were talking about is, so he's 10 years younger than me. He's 23, and he told me it was fine if I told people that. But he said that in his shop now in St. George, he is working on strictly pre-1980 stuff because he likes to avoid the computer technology. He says he'll have to get into it at some point probably, but he avoids it because it takes kind of the fun out of it in some ways. And And what I said, I think is the same. It's as true with that instance as what you're saying, as far as it being accessible, is when I was a kid, I was told not to go under the hood. I was told not to do anything like that because there was the worry you might mess something up. And from what I've learned from all these Model T guys and gals that I've talked to is, as long as you have some good connections and a good club around you, it would be pretty hard to mess stuff up where you couldn't right or wrong. It's more about the tinkering experience.
Warren has been secretary treasurer, I think, forever in our mainly T club. And we have called off this year, but a wonderful tour every year somewhere in Maine. And being transplants to Maine, we've seen Maine that we never would have seen except for the Model T Club. And it's really fun when somebody breaks down, hood goes up, everybody stops, tools come out. One year, the museum, very nicely, we were having the engine rebuild on our touring car. We were going to take on the Model T tour, and Owls had loaned us one of the brass tees, which hadn't been on the highway in years and years. And we're buzzing down the road down east, and all of a sudden, bang! And we had a flat. We never found the tube. It went off in a field somewhere, but Warren had a spare tube. Everybody came, and it was like an Indianapolis pit stop. I think it was in 7 minutes. We had the tire changed.
If everyone gets to the destination and no one's broken down, everyone's like, I mean, great. All right. So folks, it looks like we are coming to the end of our chat. We do have episode 8 premiering right at 7 o'clock. So use the link on our Facebook page or just head over to our YouTube channel if you're already a subscriber. John, this was so much fun. I feel like every time I have one of these chats with someone, I get to know so much more than I do when I'm kind of buzzing around on all cylinders at the museum. Thank you so much.
We'll look forward to seeing Phil Reinhardt in a couple of minutes, huh? Is that what's coming up?
I think this one is either Phil. I think this one's Marianne, because Marianne was the only one who wasn't sick of Tom by the time it came to teaching him to drive.
Very good. We'll look forward to seeing Marianne again.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, and see everybody in a little while.